Imagine finding out your wife was cheating, not from a confrontation, but through a text notification from her lover, while she's in the next room. What I did next, let's just say neither of them saw it coming. Hey everyone, I'm Justin. If you told me 6 years ago that I'd be sharing my story on the internet with a bunch of strangers, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a weird sense of humor, doesn't it? And trust me, you probably haven't heard of payback quite like this before. I'll get to that in a bit, how I hit my wife's lover where it really hurt, but let's just say when I first found out, I didn't waste any time. I told him something like, "Oh, just so you know, I've been benching 250 at the gym, and I might try your skull next." Petty? Maybe. But that was nothing compared to what I did later to him, and even his mom. Back then, life seemed so simple. I was happily married to the woman I thought was my forever. The biggest challenge I had was deciding what to cook for dinner. But life? Yeah, it has a funny way of shaking things up when you least expect it. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was college. That's where I met Ira, during freshman orientation. She was the kind of woman who could turn heads the moment she walked into a room. Tall, confident, and with a smile that could brighten a whole stadium. While the rest of us were fumbling with our schedules, she was already at the center of attention. And me? I was the awkward guy trying not to spill coffee all over my welcome packet. Our paths crossed at a campus coffee shop. I learned she had big dreams. She wanted to become a fashion influencer, traveling the globe and wearing designer clothes. At first, I thought it sounded a little over the top, but her passion was magnetic. Fast forward a few years, and there we were, married. Our wedding was like something out of a Pinterest fantasy: fairy lights, mason jars with handwritten name tags, and Ira, absolutely breathtaking in her lace gown. I remember standing there thinking, I'm the luckiest guy alive. But that dream didn't last. What started out as perfection slowly unraveled into a nightmare. At first, everything felt like a dream come true. Ira poured her energy into building her social media presence while I focused on climbing the ladder as a software engineer. She would spend hours setting up photo shoots, editing pictures, and collaborating with other influencers. And soon, all that hard work started paying off. Her account was blowing up. But with that new fame came complications I never saw coming. I couldn't help but swell with pride when Ira landed her first big brand deal. It felt like we'd hit the jackpot, like all her hard work had finally paid off. But here's the catch with social media fame: no one warns you about the downsides. It's a double-edged sword. As her follower count skyrocketed, so did her ego. Before I knew it, everything became about the brand. Date nights. They turned into endless content shoots. Romantic vacations. Forget about relaxation. They became meticulously planned photo shoots with sunsets, fancy outfits, and overpriced cocktails as props. And if I ever dared to suggest that we take a break and actually enjoy the moment, that wasn't even on the table. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that she was grinding hard to make her dreams a reality. But deep down, I could feel her slipping away. The girl I had fallen in love with, the one who cracked up at my dumb jokes and shared cheap ramen with me during finals, was slowly being consumed by this obsession with likes, comments, and followers. Then came the gym. At first, I was supportive. Good for her, I thought. She wanted to stay fit and healthy, and that's great. But soon enough, the gym became her new world. She started hanging out with a group of so-called friends, young, single, and way too eager to pull her into their late-night lifestyle. They called themselves the Fit Queens. I had another name for them: trouble. That's when things really started spiraling out of control. Ira would come home late, reeking of tequila and cheap perfume, giggling at whatever was lighting up her phone. Just a girls' night, she'd say, brushing me off like I was some overbearing parent. Maybe I should have confronted her harder back then, but I didn't. I kept giving her the benefit of the doubt. See, I've always been a steady guy. I don't like to brag, but I'd say I was doing pretty well for myself. After college, I landed a solid job as a software engineer, and by the time Ira's influencer career started booming, I was already climbing the corporate ladder. I had a six-figure income, a growing savings account, and a plan for the future. Stability was everything to me. While Ira dreamed of luxury handbags and five-star getaways, I focused on making sure we'd never have to worry about bills or emergencies. But despite all of that, it wasn't enough. I was grounded in reality, while she was chasing a fantasy life. And that gap between us just kept widening. I guess that's where Ira and I really started to diverge. Success didn't change me. I was still the guy who thought splurging on an extra-large pizza made for a great day. But for Ira, every dollar she earned became another rung on the ladder to her next big flex. And there was always another flex waiting just around the corner. While her world grew glitzier and more extravagant, mine stayed firmly grounded in reality. I'd grind through long workdays, come home exhausted, and find her chatting away on a live stream, giggling with her followers about the latest skincare trend or unboxing another shipment of free designer clothes. At first, I was proud. Who wouldn't be happy to see their spouse thriving? But eventually, it started to feel excessive. Let me paint a picture for you. One evening, after a brutal 12-hour shift debugging code that wasn't even my responsibility, I walked into the house. The entire living room had been transformed into a makeshift photo studio. Tripods and ring lights were everywhere, and half a dozen outfits were scattered across the floor like confetti. "Hey, babe. Can you help me with this lighting?" Ira called out, still glued to her phone. She didn't even glance up when I walked in. I bit my tongue, not wanting to start an argument. "Sure," I said, setting my bag down. But what I really wanted to say was, can we just have a normal dinner for once? That night, it hit me hard. We were living in completely separate worlds. Mine revolved around deadlines and spreadsheets. Hers was hashtags and DMs. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped meeting each other in the middle. The gym obsession didn't help, either. Ira's Fit Queen crew began monopolizing her time more and more. At first, it was just group workouts and smoothie runs. Then it escalated. Brunches turned into late-night outings that sometimes stretched well into the next morning. And the stories she'd come home with? Let's just say they didn't put my mind at ease. "Oh my God, Justin, you should have seen the bender last night, total eye candy," she'd gush, completely oblivious to how that might sound. "Sounds fun," I'd reply, my voice tight with unease. What else could I say? The gap between us wasn't just emotional anymore, it felt like we were on two entirely different planets. I forced a smile and muttered something like, "Sounds fun," but inside I was screaming. Who talks like that to their husband? The unease was turning into something more, but I tried to shake it off, until the phone call happened. It was late, probably around midnight. I was lying in bed, scrolling through work emails, while Ira was in the living room. Her voice carried easily through the thin walls. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but then I heard it, "You're just so much fun to talk to." That made me freeze. My ears perked up, and I strained to catch more of the conversation. "Yeah, he's fine, just, boring sometimes," she said, her tone light and flirtatious. "But enough about him. What are you doing tomorrow?" "Boring." She was talking about me. I knew it. She had already told someone else she found me boring, the guy who worked himself to the bone so she could chase her dreams without worrying about rent or groceries. I felt my stomach twist in a way it never had before. If this was what I thought it was, I couldn't just accuse her without proof. I needed to be sure. I never imagined I'd be the type of person to snoop on someone I loved, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. When Ira headed into the shower, she left her phone on the nightstand. My heart pounded as I stared at it. This was it. I had a choice to make. Every part of me hesitated. This was her private space, her life. But then I reminded myself that trust had already been shattered. I wasn't invading her privacy, I was uncovering the truth. With trembling hands, I grabbed the phone. Unlocking it was easier than I expected. She hadn't changed the passcode in years. As soon as the screen lit up, a wave of guilt hit me. But I pushed it aside and opened her messages. That's when I saw it. A group chat named, Fit Queens Unite. The messages hit me like a punch to the gut, graphic texts filled with innuendos, emojis, and plans for late-night hangouts. I kept scrolling, my mind racing, until I stumbled across one from Ira, sent earlier that evening. Honestly, he has no idea. I'm too beautiful to be tied down like this. I deserve to have fun, and if that means a few harmless nights, so be it. My hands began to shake. My worst fears were right there in black and white. This wasn't just my imagination running wild. This was real. So real it made my chest tighten, like I could barely breathe. I kept reading, my heart pounding with every word. Justin's so boring sometimes, she'd written. I know he's a good guy, but I didn't sign up to waste my prime years being a housewife. I want excitement, attention. I missed out on my whole phase, and it's time I fix that. There were laughing emojis scattered throughout the messages, like it was all a joke. Her friends chimed in, hyping her up with comments like, "Girl, if he's boring, why not upgrade? You're a total catch." I clenched the phone in my hand, my blood boiling. I wanted to smash it against the wall, but at the same time, I felt completely numb. It wasn't just the possibility that she had cheated, though that was devastating enough. It was the way she spoke about me, like I was just some roadblock in her life, holding her back from the fun she thought she deserved. At some point, I snapped out of the fog and started taking screenshots. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I knew I'd need proof of the person she had become when she thought I wasn't watching. That's when I stumbled upon something even worse. It was buried deep in her chat history, a conversation with someone named Ryan. I clicked on it and instantly felt sick. The messages were flirty, full of inside jokes, and there were plans to meet up. Then there were pictures, not explicit, but enough to show this wasn't just a casual friendship. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. How could she do this to me? After everything I'd done to support her career, everything I had sacrificed to help her thrive, this was how she repaid me. By sneaking around with some guy who probably didn't even understand what real commitment looked like. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching from the bathroom. My mind raced. I quickly locked the phone, placed it back on the nightstand, and lay down, pretending to scroll on my own phone. Ira walked in, humming some tune like nothing had happened. She climbed into bed without a second glance. "Good night," she said casually, turning off her lamp. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My mind was spinning, replaying everything I had read. The betrayal, the mocking tone of her messages, it all hit me like a sledgehammer. The next morning was surreal, like I was trapped in a waking nightmare. Ira acted as though nothing was wrong. She was bright and bubbly, humming along to some pop song while making her morning smoothie. Every time she flashed me that perfect smile, all I could think about were those texts, the cruel way she talked about me when I wasn't there. I had to face the truth, I couldn't keep this bottled up much longer. Something had to give. I couldn't even look her in the eye without feeling a wave of nausea. At work, I was just a shell of myself, going through the motions while my mind replayed the texts over and over like a broken record. I knew that a confrontation was inevitable, but I didn't want to explode in the heat of the moment. I needed to be ready, to control how and when it happened. That evening, Ira came home later than usual. The familiar smell of tequila and her favorite vanilla perfume clung to her. Her cheeks were flushed, and her laugh was just a little too loud, almost like she was putting on a performance. "Had fun with the girls?" I asked, keeping my voice as casual as I could. Totally, she chirped, dropping her bag on the counter. We just hit a couple of bars. Nothing crazy. I nodded, biting back the urge to say, oh really? Did Ryan make an appearance too? But I held my tongue. Not yet. She wandered off to the bathroom, and that's when I saw it, her phone buzzing on the counter. A notification popped up on the screen, Ryan, missed me yet? And that was it. Something inside me snapped. Without thinking twice, I snatched up her phone, unlocked the chat, and started typing. Hey Ryan, I wrote, just a heads up, I've been benching 250 at the gym, and I'm thinking of trying out your skull next. I paused for a moment, smirking as I reread the words. This felt satisfying in a way I couldn't quite describe. I wasn't done, though. Also, if you think sneaking around with someone else's wife makes you a man, you're in for a rude awakening. You're not a man, Ryan. You're just a protein shake with legs. I hit send and waited, watching the screen. His reply came almost instantly, and that's when I heard Ira's voice behind me. What are you doing? She asked, her tone sharp and nervous. I turned to face her slowly, holding up the phone like a trophy. Oh, look who decided to join us. Would you like to explain why your little gym buddy thinks it's okay to send you texts like this? Her face went pale. Give me my phone, Justin. I don't think so, I said, stepping back as she tried to grab it. Ryan and I are having a lovely chat. Did you know he called you fire emoji hot? Cute, right? Justin, stop it. Give me my phone. She pleaded, lunging for it again. I stepped farther away, my voice rising as I kept the phone out of her reach. Don't even think about it. You don't get to play the victim here. You've been sneaking around behind my back, making a fool out of me. So tell me, Ira, what exactly are you going to explain? She froze, her face turning crimson. Justin, please, let me explain. Explain what? I demanded, my blood boiling. That you think I'm boring? That you deserve to have fun? Or were you going to tell me how Ryan's just a harmless friend? Her silence told me everything I needed to know. I snapped. You've been lying to me this whole time. You think you're too beautiful to stay faithful, or that I'm just some boring paycheck to fund your influencer lifestyle. Tears welled up in Ira's eyes, but I was past caring. You don't understand, she stammered, her voice shaking. No, I understand perfectly, I shot back. You're selfish, Ira. You care more about your followers and your fake, fit queen life than the man who's been supporting you all these years. She stood frozen as I grabbed a suitcase and started packing her things. Clothes, shoes, makeup, it all went in the bag without a second thought. When I was done, I called an Uber and handed her the suitcase at the door. You can stay at your mom's, I said coldly. I'll send the rest of your stuff later. She stood there in the doorway, sobbing, her voice trembling in the dead silence of the house. Justin. I love you. I didn't respond. I didn't even look at her. I just shut the door in her face. The night after Ira left felt surreal. The house was eerily quiet. No ring lights cluttering the living room. No impromptu TikTok dances filling the space with noise. Just stillness. It felt strange, almost like a vacuum had sucked all the chaos out of my life. The next day, I called my friend Levi. He listened quietly as I told him everything. You kicked her out? Just like that? He asked. Damn right I did, I said, pacing the living room. What else was I supposed to do? Sit here and pretend everything's fine while she's out there flirting with some gym guy? Levi let out a low whistle. Man. I knew she had an ego, but this is on another level. Yeah, tell me about it, I muttered. The worst part is, she's not even sorry for what she did. She's just sorry she got caught. Levi sighed. Look, if you need help moving her stuff out, just say the word. Thanks, I said. That'd actually help a lot. But, we need to be smart about this. Smart how? If she's as self-centered as I know she is, I explained, she'll probably try to twist the story and play the victim. I can't let her do that. Got it, Levi replied. Let's be strategic about this. You're not in this alone. Hearing that gave me a strange sense of relief. For the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't feel completely powerless. I groaned. Of course she will. She's a pro at playing to an audience. Exactly, Levi said. Let's get ahead of it. I'll start drafting the paperwork. In the meantime, keep your head down and don't engage with her, no matter what she says or does. Easier said than done, I muttered. Over the next few days, Ira's behavior swung from apologetic to downright vindictive. She called me non-stop, leaving voicemails filled with everything from teary pleas for reconciliation to passive-aggressive digs about how I needed to set myself free. And don't even get me started on her social media. Her stories were like scenes out of a tragic rom-com, sad love songs playing in the background, artsy pictures of wine glasses, and vague posts about how some people just don't know how to appreciate a strong woman. At first, I ignored it all. But then a coworker sent me a screenshot that almost made me spit out my coffee. It was a selfie of Ira, eyes red and glossy, her hand clutching her chest like she was in the middle of a soap opera. The caption read, "Betrayed, abandoned, and left to rebuild, but a queen always rises." I shook my head, laughing bitterly. Of course, she'd spin the narrative to make herself look like the wounded party. Later that night, Levi called to give me an update. He had dropped off the rest of Ira's stuff at her mom's house. She didn't take it well, Levi told me over drinks. She was fuming. I swear I could hear her screaming through the door. Good, I said, taking a sip of my beer. She deserves to know what it's like to lose control for once. Yeah, well, don't pop the champagne just yet, Levi warned. She's not the type to go down without a fight. He wasn't wrong. The next morning, I opened my inbox to find an email from Ira's lawyer. She was demanding half of everything, the house, my savings, even some of my personal belongings. It was like she wanted to strip me down to nothing. As if that wasn't bad enough, her social media circus escalated. She began posting even more dramatic captions, like, "Rebuilding after betrayal is the hardest journey, but I will rise stronger." And my personal favorite. "Some people only love you when they can control you. Remember your worth, queens." It was classic Ira, playing the victim to perfection. Her entire feed was a tragic spectacle, though I had to admit, part of me found it darkly entertaining. But then, just when I thought she couldn't stoop any lower, she made a massive mistake. And that's when everything took a turn. One night, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw it, a post from Ira that read like something straight out of a soap opera. She wrote, "Yeah, he's a good provider or whatever, but where's the passion? Where's the fun? I deserve someone who makes me feel alive, you know." The comments section was blowing up. Some of her followers ate it up, sending hearts and fire emojis, but not everyone was buying it. "Girl, wasn't he the one paying all your bills?" one person commented. "Didn't you cheat on him though? Maybe focus on yourself instead of blaming him," another said. I almost felt bad for her, almost. Then she said something else in the post that made me stop scrolling. It was exactly the kind of thing that was indirectly helping my case in court. But Ira didn't stop there. She just couldn't resist doubling down on the theatrics. A few days later, I got a frantic text from Levi. "Dude, have you seen her latest post?" I opened Instagram, and as soon as I saw it, I nearly choked on my coffee. There was Ira, posing in front of a gym, looking dramatic as ever. The caption was a masterpiece of self-pity and delusion. They say you don't know what you have until it's gone. But sometimes, what you lose wasn't worth keeping. Starting fresh, leaving the toxicity behind, and focusing on me. It wasn't just the caption that floored me, it was her sheer arrogance, like she had rewritten history to make herself the victim in all this. But her stunts were starting to wear thin. By the time we got to court, all of her online antics, combined with the screenshots, live streams, and lack of remorse, had done more damage to her case than she realized. The judge saw right through her. In the end, Ira walked away with just her car and a small savings account. I kept the house, my savings, and most importantly, a clean break from the circus she called a life. When the ruling was announced, Ira shot me a look I'll never forget. It was a mix of rage, disbelief, and maybe, just a hint of regret. But I didn't dwell on it. The chapter was closed. After that, life felt different, quiet and peaceful for the first time in years. The house, once cluttered with ring lights, stacks of delivery boxes, and random workout gear, was finally mine again. At first, I didn't know what to do with all the empty space, both physically and emotionally. I had spent so many years wrapped up in Ira's world, her drama, her ambitions, her endless need for attention, that I'd forgotten what it was like to simply be me. But little by little, I started rediscovering myself. I focused on my own life, my own happiness. And from what I've heard, Ira hasn't exactly bounced back. She tried leaning even harder into the whole, strong, independent queen narrative, but the cracks in her story were too obvious for anyone paying attention. She's even reached out to me a few times, sending messages filled with the same empty apologies. I miss you, Justin. I know I made mistakes. We can still fix things, she'd write. But I knew better. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together. And honestly, I didn't need to. I was finally free. I didn't reply to Ira's messages. Why would I? That chapter of my life was over. But moving on wasn't as simple as I'd hoped. After everything fell apart, I was drowning in a sea of anger, confusion, and bitterness. I spent too many sleepless nights replaying every betrayal over and over in my head, wondering how I had let things spiral so far out of control. One of those nights, fate intervened. I crossed paths with Ryan's mother. We'd met a few times before at gatherings, exchanging nothing more than polite greetings and idle small talk. But this time, there was an undeniable tension between us, a shared understanding that hung in the air. Somehow, I found myself confiding in her. I told her everything, about Ira's betrayal, the humiliation, how discarded and worthless it all made me feel. To my surprise, she opened up too. She spoke about her own struggles, her disappointments with life and with Ryan. It was strange, but in that conversation, we both found a kind of solace in each other's pain. When she dropped me off at my place later that night, there was a lingering moment between us. Her hand brushed lightly against my arm, and she said softly, "I hope things get better for you, Justin." That touch, it was like a spark. It ignited something deep inside me that I hadn't felt in a long time. At first, it was subtle, a glance that lingered too long, a brush of hands. But soon, it became more. We began meeting in places where no one would find us. There were nights when we lay together, wrapped in the thrill of something that felt both forbidden and liberating. It wasn't about passion, not really. It was about reclaiming control, about asserting myself after Ira had torn me down. Each time it happened, it was like taking back a part of what I'd lost. It was revenge, pure and simple. Not just on Ira, but on Ryan too. I wanted them both to feel the way they had made me feel, powerless and betrayed. But I wasn't naive enough to think it would stay under wraps forever. Word eventually reached Ryan. He showed up one night, rage practically radiating off of him. The moment he laid eyes on me, I knew he was done with words. This wasn't going to end in an argument. He was coming for me, and he wasn't about to walk away quietly. I opened the door, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Ryan stood there, seething, his eyes filled with rage. In an instant, he swung at me, his fist clenched tight. The hit landed, but I didn't retaliate. I stayed calm, almost eerily detached, as he glared at me, waiting for a reaction. "You lost her," I said quietly, meeting his furious gaze. "You thought you could live in your fake world, sneaking around and playing with other people's lives. Now, I'm just making sure you feel what it's like to be on the other side." Ryan didn't respond. He stood there, breathing heavily, his jaw tightening as my words sank in. I could see it in his eyes, the understanding that I had flipped the script. I had taken his place, not just with his mother, but in making him feel that same crushing sense of betrayal and loss. The realization hit him like a brick, and he walked away without another word. In that moment, something shifted for me too. I'd been consumed by the need to get even, to make both Ira and Ryan feel what I had felt. But as I watched him leave, I realized something else: revenge didn't erase the pain. It didn't undo the hurt. But it did bring clarity. Red flags are there for a reason. I ignored so many of them when I shouldn't have. I've learned now: trust, but verify. And most importantly, put yourself first. You can't rely on someone else to give your life meaning or happiness. Life moves on, and so do I. But you know what? I'm grateful it all happened the way it did. Because now I'm free, free from her lies, her chaos, and her endless need for attention. Free to figure out who I am, without the shadow of her drama constantly looming over me. For the first time in a long while, I feel like me again. And that's more than enough. After Ryan left, I stood at the door for a while, just letting the quiet settle in. For the first time, there wasn't a storm raging inside me. The anger, the pain, they were still there, sure, but they didn't own me anymore. I finally felt like I was taking control of my life, not letting someone else dictate my emotions. In the following weeks, I focused on rebuilding. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from during my relationship with Ira. I hit the gym with more purpose than ever, not for revenge but for myself. I even took up new hobbies, something I hadn't done since before the chaos of Ira's influencer world consumed my life. I started hiking, reading, even taking on passion projects at work that had been collecting dust for years. Levi stuck by me through it all. One night, over a beer, he said something that stuck with me. "Man, sometimes life blows up so you can rebuild it right. You just survived a hurricane, but now you've got a clean slate." He was right. The house that once felt so suffocating was now a sanctuary of peace. No more ring lights, TikTok dances, or staged moments for social media clout. It was just me in my space, quiet, simple, and honest. Ira tried reaching out a few more times, but I ignored each message. Apologies weren't going to fix what she broke. I had already moved on emotionally, and I wasn't about to reopen that wound. Ryan? I never heard from him again after that confrontation. I imagine it stung for him to face the consequences of his own actions, but that wasn't my concern anymore. Months passed, and I felt lighter, happier. I no longer felt the need to prove anything to anyone. Life wasn't about revenge or making others hurt like I had. It was about moving forward, about learning and becoming someone I could be proud of again. One evening, I went for a hike at a nearby trail. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the trees, and for the first time in years, I truly felt at peace. I stood at the peak, looking out at the horizon, and smiled. I didn't have everything figured out yet, but I didn't need to. This was my life now. And for the first time, it truly belonged to me.